Ladies and gentlemen, we're all set up and ready to welcome our wonderful panel that will discuss threadbare inclusive leadership for a multi-generational workforce. Please put your hands together as I invite each of our distinguished panelists on stage. She is CHRO Tata Power Renewable Energy Limited. Please welcome Anupama Ratta. A warm welcome to the head HR Beauty Business, Reliance Retail Limited, Smitha Sahu. She is Vice President People, Third Wave Coffee. Let's hear it for Dia Suri. She is Vice President L&D, Big Basket. Let's warmly welcome Neelam Aluwalia. Please put your hands together for Country People and Culture Manager IKEA India, Paranita Cecil Lakra. She is Head of HR, Tata Starbucks. Let's hear it for Nabamita Banerjee. And ladies and gentlemen, moderating the discussion is Bidisha Banerjee, Head HR and Chief Learning Officer, Welspun Group. Bidisha is the best-selling author of My Voice. She's been featured on television shows like CNBC, high-profile conferences like ET Now, and major industry events including People Matters, SHRM, and others. And ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for our very distinguished moderator, Bidisha Banerjee. Well, ladies and gentlemen, one category of people seems to have been excluded in this inclusion panel, and that's, I think, the men out here. But, well, we are used to listening to ladies' voices, and we listen. Thank you. Over to you, ladies.
Actually, that's the first thing we noticed as a panel today, but that's okay. I mean, it's okay. It's once in a while, it's a different feeling. So yeah. But what a wonderful presentation by the MIA team. I think I was just texting Sukanya that amazing stuff that's going on. It's beautiful to see that. So I'm really happy to be here, and always, I was just talking to Anupama and saying, you know, out of all the retail giants, Welspun and Tata, we feel like dots, but still my heart always belongs to retail. I've worked in Future Group, erstwhile Future Group, for 8 long years, and Amisha and Nagesh and Lawrence, I know them since, you know, Train and Ecom started even before that. So it's a pleasure to always come back. So we have a very interesting topic, you know, and multi-generational workforce, the challenges and how to deal with it. Before we dive into it, I wanted to share a story. Actually, the other day I was sitting with my daughter. She's 14, so I'm a baby boomer, obviously, and she is Gen Z, right? And I kept asking her, every time I call you, you don't answer, you always text me, you know? So she's like, yeah, because not everything requires for me to answer you. I mean, whatever you want to talk to me, you can just, you know, why do you have to call and say the same thing? I can text. So that was interesting. Then the other day I took her out for some coffee at Third Wave Coffee, okay, and with her friends. And they were all sitting in the same table and texting each other. Okay, so I'm like, hey, y'all are here for coffee. Why don't you drink coffee? Why are you texting each other? And guess what they told me? They said, no, we have a friends groups. Only some of us could come to the coffee and others could not. So we're texting in the group because we're being inclusive so that they don't feel left out. So why am I sharing all of this story about my 14-year-old daughter? Because it's interesting, the perspective that, you know, if we have a curious mind, when we start understanding generations with differences, right? Because if we don't, oftentimes at work and within teams, you know, I've noticed that there usually is a narrative that's created about certain generations. So I was doing this research and I came across an Harvard article, beautiful article, you all must read it. It's by Emma Waldman, and she sort of put down some of the stereotypes of various generations. She said the silent generation, 1925 to 45, They were known as traditional, too traditional to do anything, right? The baby boomers, actually, no, I just realized I'm not a baby boomer. 1946 and 64, they're very averse to change. Maybe our parents, my parents, very averse to change. They're not seen so many change. But the Gen X, which is 1965 to 1980, very independent, but a little too worrisome. They're always worrying about the future, not very chilled out like the current generation. The millennials, the stereotype attached to them, they're very driven, but yet very entitled, okay? Gen Z, very progressive, but disloyal, okay? So these were some of the stereotypes that were attached to different generations, and they could be true, they could not be true, but what this article talks about is how one could dispel the myths only from a lens of curiosity and an open mind. And I'm so happy to share the dais with such wonderful leaders here, very powerful women in their own right. And they've done some fabulous work, and we've had a couple of conversations before this, and it was so amazing to see what they have to share today. So I know we stand between you and lunch, but we promise to make it very interesting so that we only help you go back hungry for thoughts and also food, okay? So my first question is to Anupama and Dia. So the question that I want to ask you is, in the context of what we spoke, right? So how do organizations actually go around creating a culture that can leverage strengths of each generation, right? Because we spoke about the stereotypes. So how can we create a culture where you can leverage strengths of each generation, where you can actually promote mutual respect and collaboration at the same time? Do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. So, good afternoon all. Wonderful to be here. I think I said to Vidisha earlier that I'm the odd one out because I'm not from the not very glamorous retail industry. I come from renewable energy, Tata Power Renewable Energy. So we do solar, wind, hybrid projects across the country. But there is this topic is so relevant to us because we are a 105-plus-year-old organization, and we have 3 generations working in our company. So. You spoke about Gen X and baby boomers, and a lot of us look at. So the problem with us is really not integration of the older generations, because I think that comes naturally to us. But it's more to do with integrating the younger workforce that's coming in. A lot of Gen X and baby boomer managers do look at Gen Z and the younger generation as non-serious. As Vidisha said, I would just take 3 or 4 examples very quickly. I want to make it very real, so not much theory around it. We hire about 500 plus trainees from colleges every year, engineering colleges, MBAs. So we had a batch of bright Tata Administrative Services, you would have heard of that, task managers that we recruited. Without taking names, I'll give you examples. One of them was recruited in a program office, and he visited our manufacturing plant in Tamil Nadu and said, while I am enjoying what I'm doing in the program office of a senior leader, I would love to be in manufacturing, and can you give me a project there that I can work flexibly on? So maybe 3 weeks in the plant, 2 weeks in the program office, and we've never experimented with these flexible roles ever. That's one example, and I'll come to what we did. The second one was somebody who joined our solar rooftop business. We do distributed solar. The role was given to him. He came in, said, I'll do the role. But after being in the market for a couple of days, he came back and said, I don't think I'm cut out for this. I would like to be doing financial modeling in the BD or business development space. The third one was again in the program office of a senior leader. And this leader had the habit of setting reviews on Friday evenings. So he came back and very gently and nicely said, and what would happen with a Friday evening review is you do the review and then you give actions to be closed, and Monday you then follow up. So a lot of them end up working over the weekend. He said, can we do these reviews on Wednesday instead? One is it's not Friday evening. Secondly, they will get time to really work on those actions by the end of the week and come back. Would you like to consider that? The fourth is we have a manufacturing plant in Tirunelveli in south of India. It's very close to Madurai. and we have 80% women in that plant. And we started a mental health center, the first on-site mental health center there. We have women in the age group of 18 to 23. We initially said it won't work because people won't walk in. It's embarrassing for people to walk in and have those conversations. The first month of the mental health center opening, we had 20 walk-ins of young women coming and discussing various issues, including relationship issues, 2-3 hour counseling sessions. Now, in all these examples, I think an organization like ours, where setting up precedents becomes a challenge because there are, so we have different kinds of businesses, old businesses, newer businesses. What we did differently is to be able to give them that, flexibility. To all of these requests, we said yes after a lot of consideration. For example, the person who wanted a role change, we said, look at him coming into a role, and some managers came and said, throwing tantrums in the first 2 days, saying, I don't want to do work, and I want a different role. But we in all these cases, what we did was to give them that flexibility, to allow them to work on those roles or change their roles. And today, when we talk to their managers, they're doing wonderfully well in those, in those new roles. The manager who used to keep Friday reviews changed it to Wednesday, and she says that everything works well. So I think, the new generation is not non-serious. They appreciate work-life balance. They want learning opportunities that are meaningful. They want to make a difference very quickly, so they want to create business impact. And they also want visibility. So I think a lot of work that we do is around sensitizing our baby boomer and Gen X managers around how do we really work with them. Don't be judgmental. Be a little flexible with your policies, something that you may not have done earlier. I'm not saying rock the boat completely, but show flexibility. And also, challenge some of these beliefs that we have, that people won't come forward and, say, for example, take up mental health support. So this is what we've done, and things have worked for us. Just a few examples, I thought that'd be useful.
Thank you. And Dia, do you want to share what?
Yes, sure. Good afternoon, everybody. So I'm going to take a different perspective. So I'm with an Indian startup, and we were blueprinting most of our policies. And I think the biggest challenges was actually uncovering the ways of working and how to execute it and bring that book to life, right? Everything scripted over there. And what went into putting these policies was really identifying the need states of the multi-general workforce. And when we looked at it, I think everyone was there because they believed in what this brand was going to put out over there. There was a common passion for what was being built. It was the process for each one and what mattered to them that differed. So it was about creating that inclusivity on that journey together. And it could be simple things. So you just talked about mental health. You look at the younger generation joining the workforce, they're very acceptant of asking for help. They are open to taking formal sessions, and that required us to empanel formal counselors. If it's a matter of crisis, stress, issues with a live-in partner, anything that they're grappling with, it's a very easy go-to. Not something that might come to the person they're reporting into very easily. Okay, so at times the response for that manager is not like, okay, let's catch up over a drink and let's sort things out, which would be one way of dealing with it. For a lot of people, it means balancing work hours. So, finding ways of working which are remote, hybrid. I myself am between multiple cities. But it allows people to come together to get what's done. And creating a workspace which is respectful, allows people to collaborate. At the frontline level, one of the things we realize people jump is for that 1,000 rupees, 1,500, 2,000. Instant loans was something that just created a lot of dignity of not having to ask my buddy or my manager that, I need 500 this week. It just made it as simple as saying, okay, what's the need state of every generation and how do we simplify that so that it gets taken care of and I can bring my best self to work. So it's an everyday journey. I won't say it is this thing. At times you're right, it does rock the boat because you have different issues to take care of. Explaining to a manager that a pet being sick for a person who's living very, very far away from home is as devastating as it could be of a family member. So it's about giving people space and rooms and, helping people understand and feel for the same situations. I think the last example I'll talk about is migrant kids at the stores, right? A lot of them come from agricultural families. Giving them time off to go and be the hands and legs on the farms so that they can go and contribute where it matters. It's not just about sending the money home. So a lot of this helps bring teams together. Fast-tracking women who we want to see in leadership, you're not going to be able to give them 5 years if you want to see the change. So I think these are the pieces that, we're working on to actually get the generations and do it respectfully.
Absolutely. So what I heard both of you say is that one is to have your ear to the ground and really look at practical problems. It's not just about making blueprint of beautiful policies, but to have cohesion among several generations is to have empathy and listening to them as well. Wonderfully shared. So, like I was speaking earlier, that there are certain misconceptions that are always attached to every generation and the way they work. So, Nabamita and Smita, this is my question to you. Is what are some of the misconceptions about different generations in the workplace that you've experienced, and how can today's leaders actually dispel these myths and really improve the work culture? So, Nabamita, you want to go first? Yeah.
Good afternoon, and happy to be here. I represent Tata Starbucks, and I'm sitting next to Third Wave. So I hope you visit our stores, Starbucks, very quickly. We are 470 odd stores across 71 cities. So I hope if you've not experienced us yet, you do soon. Coming back to the topic, and we're talking about generation diversity, I'm going to maybe share a little bit from the organization context. And since we are retail QSRs, let's start with the stores. Now, when we look at our stores, we have, of course, our baristas and our shift supervisors at the entry level, and most of them, they're all Gen Zs. The common perceptions, I won't even call them myths, on Gen Zs are: one, they don't listen. They have a mind of their own, they do not listen. The second one is they're not into processes. They're not people, no matter what you do, you cannot get them to adhere to processes. The third one, which again I hear quite often, is they have very strong individual personalities, and there's always this me versus we debate going on in their mind, and hence they may not be successful in team environments. Now, if very, very simply put, if we look at a barista JD today, what are the three things that we look? One, we say customer orientation. Now, if Gen Zs were not to be people who were good listeners, I can tell you, it would be impossible for them to give that service to the customers that walk into our stores, because some are great, but some would be difficult. So they're great listeners, and they are able to convert a lot of difficult situations into the situations gone right. The second, process. Of course, we talk about customer connection, experience. The truth is, there's a back engine that works, and it is so critical to get your processes right in our industry. And I think each one of them, I'm very, very proud to share, in our stores follow the processes to the T. And without that, we wouldn't be able to deliver the perfect cup to our customer. The third is, again, which is a success metric for our baristas, is to work in a team environment. And again, they might have their individual personalities, which is so important, but at the same time, I think people ask us, why is your turnover so low, why is the attrition so low? And I wouldn't attribute so much as I would to different benefits. I also feel when I visit stores, there's an amazing bonding, a team bonding that you see at different stores. And I feel that these people do wonders to bring that alive. So yes, you asked what are a few misconceptions. I think yes, these are perceptions, and I'd challenge them any day. And the last one, which I read about quite a bit, is if you want to motivate Gen Zs, you have to attach meaning to their job. It's true. At every store, we do community service, and it's a big thing. But when we do closed group interviews with our people, and we ask them, tell us what brought you in. Was it the fact that today Starbucks says that we support our communities? And they said, when I was coming, and we come from very humble backgrounds, I need a stable income to come in every month. So I'm looking at a brand that I can believe in. And I'm looking at a brand that I can trust. I'm looking at an employer who gives me stability, and that's what I'm here for. And these are all Gen Zs. So I think it also has a geographical industry connotation. So it's not right to generalize Gen Zs all the time. And yeah, I think a few things that I want to share. Thanks.
Yes.
So good afternoon to all of you, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to share some of the things. I'm a part of the largest retail, Reliance Retail, and I head the HR for the beauty business. So when we look at the Reliance Retail, more than 60% are the combination of millennials and Gen Z, whereas I am representing a format where 90%, you can say that all of them, 90 to 93% are Gen Z and millennials. So, some of the myths that comes in a day-to-day when we handle people issues, the old generations, they are very resistant to change. Whereas the old generation comes back and says that the millennials are entitled. And as Vidisha was mentioning, Gen Z are glued to the screen most of the time. So, all these kind of myth, if you really look at, there is a purpose why people are doing it, and some of the things that we drive to dispel these myths are like creating more generational awareness campaign where we look at the data, because if you look at, there is a stereotype that Gen Zs are not loyal to the job, which the data can only show that they are more loyal, and that will really eliminate that kind of perception. Also, that will foster collaboration and understanding between the generations. The second one I could talk about is something which is encouraging more social events, like annual event where all the generations can participate, they share their stories, they form informal groups, and it's not more from a generation specific, but it is more about to understand a person, so that there is more collaboration, there is more trust in each other that we drive in Reliance Retail. And the third one I would talk about is that be little sensitive to the socially or the generation wide inclusive language, because sometimes we loosely use that, oh, this is a traditional thought, oh, this is a millennial mindset. We need to be a little conscious about it, and the leaders can sensitize that we need to avoid such kind of biasness. And also, if we can talk about something on the bringing people in cross-functional training so that people can share their ideas, and the respect for each generation that increases, which we have a concept called in Reliance Retail that happy hours, people from different abilities, from different generations, they come together and they share their ideas, they share their talent. So these are some of the initiatives that I think have helped us in dispelling those myths in the multi-generation workforce. Thank you.
Great. So the next thing that I wanted to ask is, because there's so much of diversity, different people from different generations. So Parinita and Navamita, this is my question to you. Is there thereby a need to look at policies differently as well? Something that will help people to be more productive and, really align to business goals. And what are your thoughts on those, Parinita?
Thank you for that question, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Parinita. I represent IKEA India. And I think before I jump into the question of, how do we make sure we have policies, how we are accommodating different age groups, I go back to, I think, one of the aspects we were discussing in the first panel. And that is on, how is our inclusion, our DEI, we talked about not calling it that you're making it into a business case, right? But we know that it's established, it's good for our business as well. So if I bring it home to to my organization, when we take a look at home furnishing, we usually get typecast that this is not where you will have, the youngsters involved in it, or it'll be only, and I'm absolutely really bad in the labels of Gen Z and millennials, so I'm just going to go with the age categorization that, it's the middle-aged and above who will have the dispensable income to be able to do that. But when we take a look at our customer segmentation and when we look at our customer buying patterns, that's actually not something that gets established. When you have a passion for home furnishing, whether your house is one room, whether you're living in a hostel, or you have a home which is multi-generational, you have all kinds of customers that walk in. And that means, as a conscious decision for us as well, we make sure that our workforce represents that kind of diversity. I'm a big promoter that if you don't need to, we talk inclusion, right? So we are talking about that everyone has the same experience. So I'm a big promoter of why do you create segmentation when you don't need it? And in this case, when we talk about age diversity and different generations working together, it's a given. We are seeing it from a business standpoint, we see it around in the society around us. What we do at IKEA is we work with a lot of awareness. So when we are hiring, who are we hiring? Are we making sure that we have representation across all 8 segments, which is also representing the customers that will come and meet us? When we are looking at our succession, who is developing, who's not developing, and why? And then we also challenge, internally to say, are we being too conservative? Are we, going with typical thinkings and maybe our own biases that we are not being able to see talent? I loved in one of the sessions where I think the person said, look at the work I do. So what age group I represent, what gender I represent, what ability, whether visible or not visible, all of that shouldn't matter. So at IKEA, we are driving this view on inclusion. So when it comes to the question that you asked, Vidisha, on policies, we make sure that again, we want to make sure that there is a level playing field. So it should work for all of our co-workers. Do we see the need to improve from time to time? Of course. And I think that is something that sits with us, that how can we keep our awareness levels very high? How do we listen to our co-workers? How do we also challenge our own thoughts, invite for space for conversations? And if it's good for one, it should be good for the other as well. One specific policy, I think, policy or setup that we work with co-workers with flexibility in their employment contracts. So if you want to work for 40 hours, 5 days a week, you want to work only weekends, you want to work for 3 days, 4 hours in a day, it doesn't matter who you are, you will have flexibility, to support your life state, support your, whatever you want to do, maybe your passions, maybe responsibilities as home. So we try and bring that level playing field across. So we are trying not to do, I think, if I have to bottom line that, Vidisha, we are trying not to do a segmentation. We are talking about inclusion. We want to change mindsets and thoughts. So are we observant about it? Absolutely, working very closely with data, challenging ourselves, but making sure that if it's good for one, it should be good for everybody else as well. Yeah.
Wonderful. Nabamita, do you want to throw some
I
light?
think copy paste. Similar. I mean, I think we mute the number, right? So some numbers, I think it's important to mute. So whether you hire, whether you appraise, whether you develop, whether at any point in time, it's always competencies that we look at. It's always skill sets that we look at. Knowledge, skill sets, attitude, as we say. It's never to even think of, whether they're Gen Zs. And exactly like, she said, our customer base represents different generations. So we don't believe in having policies that would even invite thoughts around segmentation on that. Few policies, again, that I feel appeal to different generations. Again, one is, say, flexibility, whether it's a hybrid model in our corporate setup. We just have 2 days mandatory work from office. The rest, you can work from stores or home. So I'm sure whether it's a millennial or whether it's a Gen X or a Gen Z, it appeals to all. Again, at our stores, similar to what she mentioned, we also have the flexibility to choose the number of hours and the number of days, of course, in sync with the business requirements. Again, appeals to, there, of course, predominantly we have Gen Z, but we also have a few millennials there, but appeals to all. I think in terms of learning patterns, it's always a hybrid. So, there's a combination of in-person sessions and self-paced learning platforms, gamified versions, modules, of course, we call it bite-size because we say, the attention span is getting more and more limited. But I think when you do a hybrid, you're addressing different learning styles, need not be, again, generational. But yes, again, the traditional belief is that millennials prefer more traditional setups compared to the Gen Zs who prefer gamified versions. So again, you're giving them choices. And finally, I think creating success stories and not consciously, because like I said, we don't segment, but I'll give you an example. I know in our corporate setup, once in one of the functions which had more of the Gen Z population or crowd, and the functional head was interviewing, and we had a candidate who was in fact Gen X. There was so much of hesitance there to be able to hire the person. And I remember him asking that, two things. One is, will he be flexible? Will he be agile? Will he be able to adapt to the pace? And second is, would he be able to mingle with the team members and inspire them? Are we creating more differences than we'd want to? And of course, it took few conversations. And the person came on board, and I can tell you, one of the most respected partner, we call our employees partner, who demonstrates agility, who's known to be a fantastic people leader. I think different generations complement each other, one, when they share experiences, and two, when there is a shared set of values and goals that they work within and for in the ecosystem. I think as long as you enable that, it all falls in place.
Absolutely. I think the beauty is to be able to see what really ticks and what works, right? So great. So moving on, we'd love to know from Neelam and Anupama and also Smita that, considering we have so many different generations working and Navamita just touched upon it, that are there any different ways of learning, skill development? Are you looking at them differently? Neelam, maybe we can start with you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Vidisha. Good afternoon, everyone. I represent Big Basket. So I think, you see, human virtues have not changed in the last many 100 years. And I think they won't change in the coming 100 years. So for example, I think the way we look at them has changed. So somebody who was very warm, welcoming, caring, was called a nice person maybe 50 years back, 30 years back. Today, when we say he's a nice person, he's very inclusive. But you see, the virtues are same, which means you're caring, you're understanding, you don't differentiate. Similarly, I think when we say, the misconceptions that you asked for, so and again, I don't know Gen X, Gen Alpha, I'm saying before the 1990s, when the Indian economy had not opened up for money and we had survival, the value of money was tangible. So they want to own a home, jewelry, car. But today, the Gen X, Gen Alpha, whatever, the value of money is in experience, right? They want to invest in experience. But both are valuing money. Similarly, value of time, probably for a millennial or a baby boomer, it was getting 9-to-5 job. But for a person who's creating content on Instagram, the video should go every Monday and Thursday. That's also discipline. So that's value of time. So I think what we have to look at is not generation. We have to look at how do we want and what do we want to offer. So in my opinion, skill development programs should not be different, but you should offer a bouquet. So if I want to build a high building performance team as a capability in you, I'll offer a book, I'll offer a podcast, I'll offer some LinkedIn courses, Udemy courses, I'll offer you a mentor, I'll offer you a coach who's built high performance team. So I'll offer you a bouquet and you can pick it up from there. So learning, I think, is agnostic of all this. So my 63-year-old mother calls up Sirius and says, wake me up at 4. I'm sleeping for 2 hours. Now, at that age, she's able to learn to talk because that's the need. She thinks it's more easier than setting an alarm. So our skill development programs are not gender or age. I think we offer everybody everything. And as I think Parinita said, let's not create segmentation when it is not needed. So we've not created any.
Thank you. What about Anupama, Smita? What strategies do you all use? Or is that something that you all consider, or is it one size fits all?
So yeah, I'll again take a few examples, but I don't think this is the answer that most would expect. So post-COVID, I think learning digitally and all that has become very normal today. And as an organization, since, like I said, we have multiple generations working in the same organization, we have a variety of programs. So we have, all classroom sessions that cater to a certain segment. We have digital learning that caters to certain other segments. But what we've done is more to understand what the younger workforce is looking for, because 50% of our people are below 30 years of age today. And so there are 3-4 formats that we have introduced, and maybe I'll just share that. One is, a lot of them we realize that want to contribute beyond their area of work. So we run functional academies in our organization. One very interesting one is the Digital Academy. So youngsters and anybody actually can enroll, learn, a lot of areas of digital, and then apply that in their area of work, whatever it is. So giving them that flexibility to learn beyond their designated area of work is important. We, like I said, we hire a lot of trainees. So we have this very unique program where young people, when they come in, they are given the opportunity to work on new ideas and identifying problems in the business. They are, assigned a mentor, and then early days, when a trainee just joins, actually in the first 1 month, they have the ability to look at things differently. They are brimming with new ideas. So that's a platform that allows them to express that and then also solve business issues, which caters to their need of creating, which a lot of them we've observed through structured dialogues have that need. A third thing that we do is, when we do our annual business balance scorecards, there are a set of projects that we always identify along with it, all businesses. And a lot of these youngsters have the opportunity to work on these projects because it takes them away from the monotony of doing the same work, and it allows them that flexibility to work horizontally across teams. So that's what they really cherish. Last year, we introduced a very interesting program, what's called the Entrepreneur in Residence, and that allows an individual to take a sabbatical and then work on a business idea, present the idea, and the initial funding is done by the organization. So that's something that a lot of youngsters are picking up. But so the way we go about it is to look at what is it that the young generation is seeking from these programs. So designing these programs around addressing those needs is important. So all these have worked for us, but I also want to give you an example that's really very different from what I'm saying here. we assume that the younger generation would like digital, they would want online learning, but that's not the case. We are a business that solar projects, if some of you know, are in the remotest of areas, maybe villages that are, you know, even a basic hospital or a dispensary would be, say, 100 kilometers from that particular location. We hire a lot of young trainees who are deployed at these locations. So we have digital learning, we have LinkedIn, Coursera. I'm sure all of us here, sitting here, have access to that. But the peculiarity of that cohort is that they stay away from families, they don't have social connect, and hence they say we do not want any of this digital learning. Please come to our sites and do programs for us. So it's the same young generation, Gen Z or whatever you call it, but their need is completely different from those sitting in the offices, and they're saying that we want programs in person. We do not want to learn digitally because we want someone to come to sites and talk to us. So I think the learning for us is no one size fits all. Let's not paint them with one big brush saying that all youngsters want digital learning. It's not like that. I think look at cohorts, look at your own context and the context in which they are operating, and then design programs that suits their requirements. So that's what we've done, and that's what's worked for us.
Wonderful. Really love that perspective and love the entrepreneurial sabbatical. I think that sounds amazing. Smita, you're part of Reliance. You all have large workforces as well. What is the strategy you all use?
You know, for us, definitely skill development depends on the kind of on-demand and also suits to the particular group or cohort, what Anupama said, that so we are more focused on the digital or the blended learning, but not necessarily everything has to be digital. Like for the beauty, if you go to Tira stores, we do have face-to-face training, but because that cannot happen digitally. So it has to be, you have to balance it out, understand what will help the business. Secondly, when you look at how can you draw strength from each generations? Like Gen X would have industrial insights, whereas Gen Z would have technical expertise. So how do you balance that by encouraging or by providing good leadership outbound, where every generation contributes, they understand each other's role, and obviously that will lead to enhancing the mutual respect as well. So we need to understand that where and what fits where. That is something which you do. The last one is on when we talk about skill development, it is inevitable. Everybody has to develop the skill, otherwise you will be redundant. So creating different kinds of organizational learning pods would really help, which we have been driving. And within that, we have a reverse mentoring program where we draw strength from each generation. So that is already, we have been driving in Reliance Retail. And another very interesting initiative that we drive for our beauty business, because most of them are Gen Z, which is, we call it Bringing Insight. It is to catch up in a coffee and understand each other's thought process, because maybe the perceptions are different, and we try to clarify that. Every generation contributes with their ideas, and we develop the programs based on those inputs. So yeah, these are some of the things which we feel that we drive in Reliance Retail.
Wonderful. I know that we're standing between lunch, so what I'm going to do is try and wrap this up. But what I'll ask all the panelists to do is to, you've heard each other as well. So if there's one takeaway that you've seen really work for you in your organization, I'd just like you ladies to really quickly sum that up and say that, this worked and this probably did not work, and what's your insight or what's your thought on it? Divya, if you want to start.
Yeah. So I think I go back to what I said earlier. It is something you work on day in, day out. A multi-generational workforce, if you have to create inclusive spaces, it has to be by design. If you have people, whether they're tech savvy or whether, you know, they come with skills that are more recent, you need the deep insights. You also need the new age skills. You have to create a level playing field so that everyone has voice, they're empowered. Otherwise, people tend to gravitate to a space which they can identify with. And if your space is only reflective of a certain kind, right, you will alienate a certain few, or you will have shorter tenures with the ones you can't keep. So if they are included, it's daily work, your formats. It's as simple as leaders who have been around for 20, 30 years with that kind of experience in the industry should know when to weigh in. At the same time, the youngsters should know when they can lean on without being judged or without fear. And keeping decisions linked to facts, insight-based, I think that creates a leveling field. And I think that's the journey. If one stays focused on everything else, starts falling in place.
Wonderful. Anyone like to go next?
Yeah, I think I would resonate with her that this has to be by design. Anything, whether it is PWD, gender or generational, has to be by design. And I think if you're able to create a platform wherein they can meet and know each other and not work in silos, so I think it just reduces the gap and it will automatically happen. So I think creating platforms by design for them too has worked for us.
Wonderful.
I think one thought from my side, and I will call it out for everyone who's leading the topic and leaders in every organization, lead by example. So it's very good to talk about inclusion, but how does your management teams look? How does your store leadership teams look? Because if you say that we are inclusive, but you look different, then what you do and what you say, it's not coming together. So that would be my invitation. Work with data, look at your root causes, engage into a conversation, not with your coworkers as well, but the overall responsibility has to be with the leadership. You have to lead by example. And then I think movements will begin.
Wonderful. Nabamita?
From an intergenerational context, I still believe mute the number and create an environment of inclusion. It starts from the leaders, as she said, and create enablers throughout the life cycle of a partner, of an employee, to ensure that we are really living it. Keep your listening platforms open to ensure that, in case there's any intervention that's required, we provide that. So yes.
Do you want to share, Nabama?
So for me, one of the takeaways is that if the leaders can really drive the intergenerational collaboration by design, which I agree with all of my co-fellows, and if you can drive by design and put different platforms where you can encourage different generations, you can foster innovations and empower them, provide them space, and you can maximize the growth. I think that is what is my key takeaway from this session.
So I think, firstly, I think it's great that we are discussing multi-generational diversity, because it's always under the shadow of gender or, persons with disabilities or LGBTQ. I think this is the first forum where we are actually discussing multi-generational, and it's so relevant for an organization like ours. I think the only thing we do a lot is to accept that this change is not going to happen overnight. I myself am a Gen X manager, and I know how much I struggle with understanding the younger workforce that works with me, and have to really reflect to start making those changes in my day-to-day work style. So I think it's important for all of us to be patient with our baby boomer and Gen X managers, work with them. And for all those managers, what we tell them is, a lot of us would have teenage children and young children. So we do make an effort to empathize with them and put ourselves in their shoes. So if you can do that at home, why can't we bring that back to work and do the same thing at work? So one thing that we must do, and I think for us it's important, is to work patiently to bring about this change, I think. that's important.
Wonderful, and I think such amazing insights from all of them, and walking the talk, listening, doing things that are right for the organization when it's not required, not segmenting. So I think what I'm taking away from our conversation today, it's not us versus them, it's us and them, right? I think if we are able to do that together, I think we will have some amazing way forward. So we have 3 minutes, 38 seconds left. So if there are any questions, I'd like to, yes, I think I can see 2 hands. I think the young lady at the back, I think she raised her hand first, yeah.
Thank you. So my question is a bit of insight also. So maybe I'll start with my insight and then my question would be for Anupama because let me come to that piece. So the insight that I bring is I think most of us have been raised in families, in a joint family setup or a semi-joint family setup, right? At least I myself have been raised by my grandparents. I am a millennial, now I'm a mother of a Gen Alpha, but I horribly miss that because now the family structure has changed. It's more nuclear, right? While there are other reasons, but the thing that I want to point is there should be one reason why overall, sociologically, if we look at this, the family structure has evolved, it has changed completely. And as per my observations, wherever in families the grandparents have been very warm, very, very acceptance level is high. I think those are the families that are still survived and the young ones still want to go back. Correct. Now the cue that I have is how do we get into the reverse mentoring piece? How do you kind of sensitize the management about being open for the reverse mentoring? Anupama, if you may want to answer this. Why? The reason being it's sector-wise probably I would be able to relate with you more. Yeah.
Great, I think what you said makes a lot of sense. I think, yes, there's a lot of these social structures have changed. I'll talk about our organization. We really don't have a formal reverse mentoring program. I didn't get your name, sorry.
I'm Pallavi Bakshi from Tata Motors.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Pallavi, I don't think we don't have a formal reverse mentoring program really, but we do have a lot of these projects that both or multiple generations come together to work on. So like I mentioned about our digital academy, for example, this is open to everyone. So there are various age groups that come, learn together there. It's all completely digital learning. And then they identify use cases in businesses where they come together to apply those learnings and solve problems. So I think our approach has been to bring them together in forums like these and in formats like these where they solve business problems together or exchange ideas. And that's how that's what's working for us. But every organization may want to look at it differently. That's how we do it. Most of our learning interventions are designed in a manner that multiple generations come together to be able to work on these projects. Also, like I mentioned earlier, we are running, I don't like to call it sensitization really because it almost feels like you're not sensitive and I'm sensitizing you, but whether it's gender, whether it's persons with disabilities. But we do a lot of work with managers, leaders, on how to really work with a diverse set of employees that could be, it could be Gen Z, it could be women, it could be any segment. So we do a lot of work around how do we do away with unconscious biases, and so these programs continuously run in the organization that helps make us more aware. I wouldn't say sensitized, but make us more aware of how we are behaving. And that includes all of us, including HR folks like us. So that's how we do it in our organization.
Thank you so much, Anupama. So unfortunately, time's up, but we'll be around for lunch. So if you all have any more questions, we'll definitely meet up with you. So thank you, panelists, once again. Lovely panel discussion, and I think we've got given the audience enough food for thought for today. Thank you so much.